Good evening and welcome to the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County Forum for Candidates for Lake Stevens City Council. I'm your moderator, Karen Matson. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County. And this evening we have candidates for Lake Stevens City Council positions 6 and 7. There are also 2 candidates each for positions 1 and 2. They'll be participating in a different forum. During this forum, we have candidates Steve Ewing and Jessica Wadhams for position 6, and Marcus Tagent and Joseph Jensen for position 7. The League thanks all the candidates for running for office, for your willingness to serve the community if elected, and for making time to participate in this forum this evening. It is the policy of the League to be nonpartisan. Therefore, we do not endorse or oppose candidates or parties, but we do take positions on issues which we've studied and upon which we've reached consensus. Ground rules for this forum were sent ahead of time to each of the candidates. I'm going to take a moment to explain the question and answer period rules. Opening and closing questions have been shared with the candidates. They know what comes first and last, but other questions have not been shared. We have made the candidates aware of issues that the forum plans to cover. And we thank all the community members who took the time to send us recommendations for those issues. I'll pose the questions. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to respond. 90 seconds will be allowed for answers to the final question, and I'll remind you of that when we get there. We're using a countdown timer visible to all the candidates. It shows elapsed time, alerts candidates when there are 15 seconds left, and when time is up. Time limits on answers will be strictly enforced. When you see the timer turn red, hear the chime, you need to be done talking. I'll change the starting order for each question, rotating through the candidates in a predictable fashion. Order was determined randomly before the forum, and the order for the first question will be Ms. Wadhams, then Mr. Jensen, then Mr. Tagent, then Mr. Ewing. We'll then rotate through that order, and each of you will have an opportunity to start first 2 times. Let's begin. Ms. Wadhams, first question. What qualifications and experience make you a strong candidate for this position?
First, I just want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to participate in this forum. I have been in high-level leadership positions for several years prior to deciding to step into a role as a full-time stay-at-home parent. I also run a soon-to-be nonprofit that supports marginalized groups in and around Lake Stevens. I have a tenacious work ethic and a strong enthusiasm for understanding what the needs of my community are and how to effectively provide solutions. As Lake Stevens grows, so must our progress in a multitude of ways. So by electing individuals with the long-term future in mind, we can start to become more proactive in our growth. I plan to create strong focuses on government transparency, public safety, sustainable growth, and small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Be sure to there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm humbled by your invitation to take part in this forum. And a special thank you to the audience for taking the time to make an informed vote. The echo of every woman's vote for the future is undeniably important to hear. I summarize the experience needed to sit on City Council in only a few words: perspective, compassion, critical thinking, honesty, and imagination. 2 decades of hard-earned experience gives me the ability to understand the needs of people, groups, companies, programs, and systems, and using every perspective to collaborate in a diverse team to find every different solution and then picking the one that'll work for everyone. Much like our city, some of these problems have been decades in the making and will require critical, imaginative thinking in order to be able to address this complex issues.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Mr. Tagent, you're up next. Mr. Tagent, please unmute.
Apologize.
No
Saying
problem.
of the years, please unmute. Thanks for having me, League of Women Voters. I really appreciate the opportunity to share my opinions. So I would say the first part of it is experience. I've been on the council for 3 terms. I've been unanimously voted as council president several times. I am also a small business owner in the community. I've served on the chamber. I've been part of the Chamber of Commerce for, I don't know, 15 plus years. I've served as the president of the Chamber of Commerce. I involved in my community. I'm very much part of Kiwanis. I served as the Kiwanis president, which did a lot of great things for the community. I'm currently in Rotary. I'm involved in the Veterans Affairs Commission. So veterans is a big, important part of this for me. I'm a small business owner here in the community. So I'm a veteran small business owner. And I make the Lake Stevens community a priority in my life. And I've lived here a long time resident, and I think it's important to be involved in our community. That's why you should.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ewing.
Thank you for having me tonight. I've lived in Lake Stevens since 2005. I've been on the Planning Commission for 2 years prior to joining the council 2 years ago. I've attended dozens of meetings, the city council. I didn't just start being involved in politics in 2020 during the pandemic. Rendered hundreds of hours of service to individuals and organizations within our community. We've funded the Lake Stevens Police Station and the mill to meet the current and growing needs of our city. As a city council member, we've funded and built Cove Park, Lundin Park, Frontier Heights Park. We established the farmers market, which was greatly needed by our community. We created, with the help of Kim Daughtry and Sean Fredericks, the Lake Stevens Advisory Council. We secured land for the new Lake Stevens Food Bank. We developed an HOV lane for 20th Street, broadly supported by affordable housing organizations and law enforcement organizations like the Lake Stevens Police Guild and the Snohomish County Sheriff Deputies Association. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jensen, you'll lead off in responding to the next question, and that is, what are the biggest challenges facing Lake Stevens, and what are its greatest strengths?
The greatest challenges I think that are facing our city would have to be growth, first and foremost. It's undeniable that this region is growing much faster than the rest of the country. Our zip code here in Lake Stevens, 98258, has more than quadrupled, I think, the estimates for its target growth, and now has over 50,000 people. That's the number one thing that challenges our city, followed closely behind by changes in the way that we work and climate. But I think the strongest part about our city is its people. Our community is willing to come together and rally around problems and help each other. And I think that that type of community service is going to be required in order to tackle some of the problems that we're going to need to address in the future.
Mr. Tadgen? Mr. Tadgen, please unmute.
Balancing into infrastructure. The trust has always been a priority. I've been to Washington, D.C. to get funds with that. I worked with Steve Hobbs to get funding, and our community. Transportation is going to become a major issue as a challenge for us as Arlington's being built out, Marysville's being built out, and so it's not the trust, so it's the Highway 9 corridor. Parks and open spaces, on the committee for the parks and open spaces, making sure that our kids have places to go and have recreation. I think being sidewalks is another, budgeting sidewalks. You're going to need to make sure that we're finding funding for that and creating partnerships, working with neighboring communities. And I think another big part of that is managing our growth, looking at hard facts and making sure that we make smart decisions, not for now, but 10 years from now. Thank you.
Mr. Ewing.
I think everyone's hit on that. Growth management is key. Our city is growing rapidly. We need to ensure that our public safety is keeping up with, and the other parts of the city are keeping up with the demands of the city. We need to make sure that we have adequate parks and recreation for our residents. We have the pipeline trail that's in the works, and we have a pump park that is in the works as well. Economic development is key, making sure that we have the tax revenue to support what we have going on in the city, so we can limit the tax burden of the citizens. We also need to make sure that we have an adequate senior center and a food bank to meet the needs of our residents. I think a lot of times the residents are 20% of our residents are senior citizens, and our senior center is inadequate to meet the needs of our residents. We also need to make sure that we have adequate funding for a food bank. We're still $2 million short for getting that food bank built and operational, and it will be a multi-service.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wadhams.
Yeah, the North Cove project has continued to get a lot of praise by our community, as well as the seasonal farmers market that we have. Both have attracted people in and around Lake Stevens, which is great. Our local group, Down to Earth Community Gardens, has also been hugely helpful for some of our community members that have faced some difficult times this season. Sadly, the city has been recently under investigation for projects including the North Cove project for unpermitted work, unsafe working conditions, and in ignoring environmental regulations. So because of the current state of affairs, we unfortunately have a lot of work ahead of us to get these issues resolved and prevented from happening going forward. We also have opportunities in the way that we approach our development as it pertains to protecting green spaces and the ecosystems that reside in them. With new developments, I plan to proceed with a more selective approach.
Thank you, Ms. Wadhams. Appreciate it. Mr. Tadgen, you get to lead off on a very big question for a very short minute. What initiatives would you support to address homelessness, food insecurity, drug and alcohol abuse, and mental health issues? Unmute and tell us all about it.
Sorry, that's a big question. So let's talk about homelessness. First and foremost, Lake Stevens has done an excellent job of reaching out and getting services out to those who are homeless. We've had a task force. Our police department has reached out for people with mental health issues. There's been several camps in our community of people who are homeless. We've done an excellent job at reaching out to those people and trying to give them services. A lot of those people are veterans, and the Veterans Commission, we've tried our best to identify veterans and how we can get them help. So that's an important part. And then we've given rounds of funding to our Volunteers of America to help people stay in their homes. Those grants are helping people with rents and other things like that. There's a lot of people out there who need help and finding funding and resources. Our job is to build partnerships and connect those people to get the help they need.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ewing?
Thank you. April is Suicide Awareness Month. It's important that we support organizations that address this critical issue that affects our youth and our adults and our veterans in the community. The Lake Stevens Food Bank is critical to making sure it's going to be a multi-use facility that will involve the veterans, Volunteers of America. Our law enforcement officers use a social worker, embedded social worker program that shows an ability to assist people and to keep them from entering the criminal justice system. We know that addiction is real. It does not discriminate. Ideally, we'll get to the point where mental illness is treated like physical illness. I would love to see it destigmatized and see the level of services provided for mental illness to be comparable to those that are provided for physical illness. With regard to homelessness, we should especially focus on individuals impacted that have children. Lake Stevens has a significant number of children who are experiencing homelessness, and our school district is children.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wadhams? Ms. Wadhams, please unmute.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
First priority is creating affordable housing so that we can be ready for the inevitable growth that Lake Stevens and all of Snohomish County is expected to see and seeing. This means more attention to what developers are proposing and taking into account our community's median income. Our housing needs to be more reflective of our entire community. Currently, there are no options for a standard single-family home for less than $500,000. I would also push for more available resources, not just through the city's website, but also through community outreach that as elected officials can be doing in regards to mental health. Lastly, our city should take active steps to grow job opportunities. This can look like participating in apprenticeships organized by unions who pay fair and livable wages, as well as small business spaces that boost jobs and our overall economy. I do applaud the partnership between the Lake Stevens Police Department and our county embedded social workers for all that they do.
Thank you, and Mr. Jensen.
I think I'll actually pick up right there and say that the embedded social worker program that we have in the Lake Stevens Police Department is something that I wholeheartedly endorse and would look to try to expand or utilize to its absolute fullest. The police department is the first line of contact when it comes to anybody in our community that is homeless or experiencing mental illness or other sorts of unstable living conditions. The ability for them to have the tools that they need to address these individuals and to work with other members of the community to be able to resolve this complex and complicated systemic issue is paramount to our ability to resolve it. But I think that one of the things we touched on was creating partnerships, and Lake Stevens can't do this alone. We need to have federal, state, and county level support in order to solve.
Thank you. Mr. Ewing, what measures would you support to keep housing options affordable in Lake Stevens?
Affordable housing, as noted previously, is very difficult. So one of the things to work with, I've been working with the Affordable Housing Council and the Snohomish County Camano Realtors Association, and have their support in working with local folks to make sure that there's affordable housing. The biggest challenge that we face in Lake Stevens is available land. There is a very tiny amount of available land in the city. And as a result of that, the prices are going up. So working with one of the options that exists is to expand our UGA to allow more land for us to be able to provide affordable housing for all of our citizens so that everyone can enjoy this great community.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams?
Yes, as one of the fastest growing cities within the state, really, this is a huge concern. As developers approach the city, the representatives need to be more selective in the allowances. We need to start creating room for not just single family homes, but homes that reflect a broader scope of economic levels. Fostering relationships as well with developers and agencies that support that work of affordable housing will be a key to Lake Stevens staying ahead of the curve, which it currently is in all of Snohomish County. One of the things that I am proud that my city has done is made accessory dwelling units easier for homeowners to make available for our community. And so my plan would be to continue that work forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen?
This is a extremely complicated, multi-pronged solution that we're going to have to enact in partnerships with the county and the state when it comes to future growth planning over the course of the next 20 or 30 years. I think one of the most important parts to recognize is that Lake Stevens has had 6 submitted requests to expand the footprint in which we are building, and all 6 of them were denied because the county and other authorities said that we have plenty of space here within the city to be able to expand and develop within what we have. I think what we might see here is a need for some more imagination, and we need to be utilizing the space that we do have more responsibly. That means less tracts of single family housing as far as the eye can see, and more creative solutions that will work for more individuals.
Thank you. Mr. Tagent?
Got the mute right this time. Let's see, first and foremost, I've been working for affordable housing. I'm endorsed by affordable housing master builders. Snohomish County Association have also endorsed because I come up with solutions. I was on the front line of having accessory dwelling units. I voted for accessory dwelling units. That helps with infill. When it comes to available reports, that report is very, very flawed. We have to think about our environment when we look at our in wetlands and what we have available. The reports that are out there need significant work, and that costs a lot of money to get those reports right and have wildlife. I don't want to put just housing, single track housing, and then worry about the environmental impact. So the environment is really, really important to me. And I think that's why I've been endorsed by all those groups. And then finally, I would say We need to look at tax credits for buildings and find solutions for the people who are trying to find affordable housing. I want my kids to be able to afford it.
Thank you. Ms. Wadhams, you're back in the lead, and here's your question. What is your strategy for working productively with your council colleagues and with members of the public whose ideas or life experiences are different from yours?
Yes, thank you. One of the biggest things I actually respect about this position is its nonpartisanship. It's an opportunity for people to come together and work on the commonalities we can all agree to. Safety, security, and prosperity are values we all care about. If we stick to the issues our city faces with a receptive heart and a goal in mind, there's really no limit to what we can accomplish. As a leader for my entire career, I often worked with folks I didn't agree with, and was able to have very successful partnerships, regardless of personal feelings. At the end of the day, I will work with anyone to do the right thing for our city.
Thank you. Mr. Jensen?
Over the course of the last 20 years, my job has been to collect unique and diverse perspectives on different problems. The group of people that I work with are distributed all across the country and, more importantly, across the world. So having these different perspectives and life experiences has been something that I've negotiated with for quite a long time. My job is to be able to look at a problem, analyze it from all sides, work with a diverse team with competing priorities, and find the solution that's going to work for everyone on the timeline that's allowed. I think that the most important part of being on city council is not necessarily working just with your colleagues, but listening to the people and hearing their voice and allow it to impact the decisions being made.
Mr. Tagent?
I would like to say, first and foremost, council, I'm endorsed by 5 of the council members currently that are on the city council. I'm endorsed by 2 of the county council, by Steve Hobbs, and have worked together on a lot of projects. That's really hard because while this is a nonpartisan seat, sometimes politics play a part of it, and remaining neutral and informed and creating those partnerships has been a big important part of what I've done so far. Experience in leadership, knowing that there's groups out there with veterans commissions, the War Memorial, working with them and finding real life solutions and helping ease their concerns. Being open to listen to groups. I recently had a great open dialogue with a BIPOC group of Lake Stevens. We formed a commission to help advise the mayor as a council to make sure that we could be informed. I think an important part of it is being able to see it through their lens and being open to new perspectives and making sure that you're open to hearing.
Mr. Ewing?
Thank you. I think it's important for us to work together to understand the commonalities that we have and question. I think if people listen to each other, they'll find that we have more in common than we have not. In one of the 7 habits of highly effective people, one of the keys is to seek first to understand and then to be understood. And working together with people who have different viewpoints. So working on the Planning Commission has been a really outstanding opportunity for me because of the very broad and strong views that the different members of the council had. We had a case where we were tied at 3-3. We didn't have the 4th or the 7th person there, and we needed to make a decision to send it to council. And one of the council members that I had a strongly different view than she did, she asked me a question that fleshed out my concern. And at the end of the day, her questioning with me was able to persuade me to change my vote and to side with her.
Mr. Jensen, you'll take the lead in letting us know what are the most pressing environmental issues your city faces, and what would you propose to address them?
This is a very complex and loaded question. The problems that are facing Lake Stevens specifically is very largely dominated by the lake and the creeks that feed and supply the rest of the area with the natural wetlands and resources that we are so blessed with. My endorsement from the Sierra Club was not something that I earned easily. and I do not take it lightly. We've gone through dozens and dozens of different scenarios and cases where the environment is being impacted by the way that current building codes and land use requirements are infringing upon these natural resources. When these types of votes come up before council, I think that it's critically important that you do not have ties.
Thank you, Mr. Tagent.
Yes, I would say the lake is our number one priority when it comes to environmental issues. I've been on the council several years now, and the lake has always been a priority, I think, for every council that we've had. We've cleaned the lake up. We've eradicated tons of environmental species, plant life. Another important part is making sure that we work with the Department of Ecology. The Department of Ecology has been on the front line with us as a council, advising on how to take care of the lake and looking at different ways. We need to be open to new technologies. We need to be open to the Fish and Wildlife Department. We are very careful about building around the lake. And then you look at the environmental impacts of new construction. We make sure that we're following all the Department of Ecology guidelines. We're looking at that as we issue building permits, and we're coming up with new technologies and new ways of thinking. I would say another important part is our street sweeping program. Getting these contaminants not go down the drains are very important. So we've done everything we can do to keep phosphorus out of the lake.
Mr. Ewing.
As noted previously, the lake is the crown jewel of our city. It is the largest lake in the city. And now, as a result of us annexing in the southeast portion of the lake, we are now have the sole responsibility for maintaining the lake's water quality and the corresponding streams that affect it. So as we need to work with the Department of Ecology, which we are working on dredging the lake currently. The city has had an outstanding partnership with the Department of Ecology and Fish and Wildlife to be able to obtain those permits. The city also needs to be more walkable. We need more sidewalks in order to give people less reason to drive their cars. We also need to make sure that we are improving our transit options. We have one little tiny park and ride for the city of Lake Stevens, which is unacceptable. We need to expand our transit options so that we don't have single occupant people driving through the city. Instead, we can get more people on buses and other public transport options.
Ms. Wadhams.
The Growth Management Act is in place so that we are preventing urban sprawl, but also so our environment is protected from overdevelopment. And climate change is happening, and we really need to be building more sustainably. And we also need to be educating our constituents on how we as a community can lessen all of our carbon footprints. With the current issues that have arisen about Lake Stevens doing work without permits and without regard to regulations, my priority would be to ensure our city is operating legally and within the rules while also seeking better options that support environmental sustainability.
Thank you. Mr. Tagent, what should be your city's plan to deal with existing or potential racial inequalities? Unmute, please, sir.
I thought I clicked the button. I'm sorry. Struggle bus tonight. I would say first and foremost, we have had training for our staff. The council, I've sought out training myself. We've talked to several groups and organizations. We formed a committee to help advise the mayor, which directly helps advise us. I think that we should take the time to listen to these groups. I think we should be able to see it through a new lens. Another part of it is our police department in the last few years just got accreditation. That means they've gone through a lot of training and learned on de-escalation. They've worked on how to be more focused on looking at the diversity that we need to realize that Lake Stevens has come. We've got a city of 40,000 plus now. With all of our annexations, it's important that we embrace this. We need to hear the groups. We look forward as a council. I always look forward to hearing constituents come to meetings, let us know the issues they're facing. And most importantly, we want them to feel safe. We want everyone in our community to feel safe. We're the 5th safest city.
Mr. Ewing.
Thank you. As noted previously, the seeking first to understand the differences that we have people and to appreciate those differences. Our community is becoming increasingly, and world at large, becoming increasingly polarized. So one of the things that we've done as a city is the Community Advisory Council. I participated in that meeting last month. It was a really outstanding meeting. We've got just an amazing group of folks from a broad cross section of our community, of all different, from all over the world, and I'm grateful for their participation in this important council. You know, it's important to be a part of organizations that may be a little bit different than you. I'm a member of the National Association for Advancement of Color People, the NAACP, in part because my niece is African American, and also in honor of my Native American heritage. We need to treat all citizens with dignity and respect and give them a safe place to live.
Ms. Wadhams?
You know, this topic is particularly close to my heart as I co-found a group called Lake Stevens BIPOC and Allies. Our group spent 6 months working diligently to get a DEI commission in place by the request of the many community members we connected with. Unfortunately, the mayor and council did not move forward with a vote, and currently a DEI commission does not exist in Lake Stevens. Our city needs to be better at giving marginalized individuals a place in decision-making. It's also important to do community outreach for the sole purpose of caring about our amazing community members. I really appreciate the community policing efforts made by our former chief and our current one, despite being historically underfunded, which I will hope to change. This type of policing is what creates trust between police and community members and is a proactive approach that has been proven to work in many other communities across the country. This work has and will remain a major part of who I am.
Thank you. And Mr. Jensen?
I am struggling with some of the things that I've heard surrounding this particular topic. I want to say that first and foremost, the Lake Stevens Police Department has done an overwhelmingly incredible job with their outreach and relations with the community, including receiving their accreditation. The work that they're doing must be supported and fully funded going forward. This topic about how city council can work with marginalized communities is a very touchy one, because myself and others advocated for a real commission to be able to help give marginalized individuals a voice in the city, and yet that was set aside and rather an ineffectual council was installed.
Thank you. We're on to the last question. Those of you watching may note that Mr. Ewing had to leave us. He informed us ahead of time that he had an unmovable date with another meeting at 7 p.m. this evening. So I'm regretful that we couldn't hear his response to this last question, but he would have led off on this question. So Ms. Wadhams, it will be you who has the opportunity to go first. And this is the question for which you have 90 seconds to respond. And that is, what additional issues or information would you like to bring to the attention of the community?
Yes, thank you. You know, Lake Stevens is in a really vital time right now as we continue to grow and change. The current council has recently proposed to expand our urban growth area, which was denied because we are nowhere near our population requirements within the city limits. Expanding at this time will create urban sprawl and negative environmental impacts. You know, there are smarter and more transparent ways to approach our growth and protect the future of Lake Stevens. I also want to let people know that I am proud to be endorsed by several representatives, John Lovick, April Berg, Emily Wicks, Jared Mead, Megan Dunn, and former Snohomish County Sheriff Ty Trineri, to name a few. I'm also endorsed by the Snohomish and Island County Labor Council and Washington Conservation Voters. It is an honor to be considered, and I look forward to serving my community. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. Mr. Jensen?
Again, I do greatly appreciate and I'm humbled by the opportunity to be able to address this forum, and I very much do appreciate your invitation for me to do so. A few of the things that I think it's very important for voters in Lake Stevens to be able to know is that there are words and then there are actions. If you're being told that somebody is qualified to sit in city council because of all of the things that they've done in city council, but then go on to tell you about all of the problems that we need to address and all of the things that need to be fixed in the city, I have a hard time being able to line those two things up. I'm not a member of the builder community. I have not received funding from members of the building community. And I think it's important to point out that that type of funding, and just as importantly, the endorsements of those groups, does not necessarily mean that they are looking out for the best interests of our city. Being endorsed by a building group only means that they think that you're the best person to help them, a company, build. That's the key. I'm looking to represent the people of Lake Stevens, not any special interests, and I look forward and hope to have your vote doing so.
Thank you, Mr. Tagent.
Yeah, I would like to start out by saying Lake Stevens is my home. I graduated from Lake Stevens High School. I graduated from Lake Stevens High School. I went in the Persian Gulf War. I'm a veteran, United States Marine, and Lake Stevens has been my home for a very long time. I really care about my community. I care about the lake. I care about all that goes on in the community and so forth. What's important to know is that we need smart decision-making. You can talk about all the good things that go about Lake Stevens, but there's issues that come up that we need to address. And it takes experience. It takes leadership. It takes someone who's involved in the community. I'm a small business owner. I hear the small business people with their issues and their frustrations about traffic and congestion. This isn't something that just goes away. It's only going to get worse. And we need to have people who are tied in with someone like Steve Hobbs, who's endorsing me. I'm also endorsed by affordable housing. We have affordable housing issues. Snohomish County realtors, they all know that we have housing issues. We have backfill issues. It takes time and effort to be out there working in the community to hear all these voices. I've been sitting on the council for several years now, and it's important to know that I value our parks. I value all the work that everyone's done, and I value the diversity that this community has grown for. But we need real problem solvers, and I'm that person to help solve those problems with my experience and leadership.
Thank you, Mr. Tagent, and Ms. Wadhams, and Ms. Jensen, and Mr. Ewing for joining us and for running for office. We're appreciative, too, of those of you listening to this or watching this. A recording of this forum and others will be available on the League of Women Voters of Snohomish County website and our YouTube channel. You can find links to those programs at lwvsnoho.org. We encourage you to explore additional information about these candidates and all the candidates. The Snohomish County voter pamphlet will be mailed to residents on October 13th. Vote411.org, sponsored by the League of Women Voters, is another good source for nonpartisan voting information. Finally, general election ballots will be mailed on the 14th of October. Election day is November 2nd. Please vote. This concludes our candidate forum. Thank you all for joining us.